Hey team, how are you? This is an exciting week. I've been doing every week for the last, let's get there, 6 weeks. I've been doing a series on teamwork in your business, how to identify what the problem is, how to set goals for teamwork, how to build capability for teamwork. And what I'm going to talk about today is the final piece in that, which is then how do you get that to translate out into external teamwork? What I'm going to share with you is something quite exciting. This is the philosophy that sits behind all my teamwork work. It's basically about the universal connection of all things, which I know is a bit woo-woo and a bit spiritual, but that's the thing behind it. And I think if you get this right, it can fundamentally change the way you think about managing and leading your business. So it's exciting. Let me share it with you and let's get started. So what you'll see here is an idea around teamwork culture, but actually what this is an operating system for how you can run your business. Think about the way you think about the way your employees interact internally and the way they then interact with your external stakeholders, your partners, suppliers, your clients, your customers. That's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So what we're going to cover is that the world has changed, and it requires a different way to think about how to run a business. And I'm really saying that to do this well, you've got to think about really upgrading your thinking, but then upgrading your operating system for how you operate as a business. And if you like what I'm talking about, what I invite you to do is to send me a message or connect with me in the comments below, or send me a messenger message, and we can talk about how we can work with your operating system in your business and upgrade it so that you can get the results you want. Okay, cool. So let's talk about what this is. So oneness is essentially this idea that I talked about before. It's an idea that in an open source world, which I talked about what that is before, where everything's interconnected and we've got technology and social media, meaning that information is zipping around the world at incredibly fast, that the risk and growth dynamics of a business have changed. And if you're unaware of those, you can end up hitting a plateau, and it can stifle your growth. This is what I define as an open source world. I think the destructive and creative cycles, what I mean by that is the number of the time it takes for half the businesses within a particular sector, law, construction, whatever, to go out of business has halved. A lot more companies are exceeding and a lot more companies are failing. That seems to be happening quicker. Critique and praise go instantly viral. So you would know social media. If someone likes something, they write a review straight away. Everyone knows about it. So there's this transparency of information. And we've now got this unlimited ability to connect with anyone we like all over the world through using collaboration tools. Now, my premise here is an open source world. You need to think about your business more like an ecosystem than a machine. And I'm going to talk more about that shortly. Here's Apple's business ecosystem. Look at the complexity of it. So, you've got on this side, you've got the fact that Apple in some cases is collaborating with its competitors, Microsoft and Google, to deliver services. At the same level, it has partnerships with all these different technical backend providers. It builds a community of developers to develop apps and music and content on its networks. It's a complex ecosystem that's both internal and external. You imagine if any one of these connections, if Apple didn't invest in any one of these connections here, and the connections between them, what it would mean literally for the feeling of the business and the revenue possibilities of the business. So there's kind of an old way and a new way. The old way is to see a business as a series of disconnected elements of a machine, like where KPIs are given out and there's internal competition for resources and jobs. Efficiency matters most, and you've got to navigate the internal structure to get ahead. And the new way is much more based on biology, and it's really about how do you sustain and protect and grow your business ecosystem. So the idea here is that yes, we compete with others, but also if we can improve the strength of the overall ecosystem by connecting and building connections with others internally and externally, we all win. In this environment, there's a much more focus on creativity. There's much more an external focus. There's much more focus on being adaptive and speed to market. And to get creativity, you've got to, your people got to feel like they're psychologically safe, not threatened. Hope and opportunity predominates, not fear. Okay, so the question you ask yourself is, in a world, in this more open source world, do you think of all those connections that your business has that needs to have both internally and externally to be successful? And are you thinking about the interconnections, or do you think about your business as machine-like? Here's an example, Dukan Gorge. This is a gorge, beautiful part of Australia, out in the Northern Territory. It's a sacred site for the Indigenous people in Australia. And a company in Australia called Rio Tinto, a big mining company, has a big mine near here. And as part of their exploratory search for materials, sorry, not for the search, as part of their mining, they use a lot of explosives. And rather than engaging with the local land councils to check whether this is a sacred site, there was a complete miscommunication between those land councils and internally, and this particular gorge was blown up. It was a big thing in Australia, but an even bigger thing for Rio Tinto. So there's a short-term and a long-term impact of things like this, where we don't realize or don't get a sense of what the impact of not thinking about the needs of external parties. The short-term impact is not huge financially, but definitely massive in terms of reputation. And the long-term impact is that the land councils in Australia are now refusing to talk to them, which makes progress hard on a lot of their other mining sites. This is another great example of what I'm talking about. This one here with the cauliflower. So in Australia here, we've got one of our big supermarkets is called Woolworths. This older bloke, not the one at the bottom there, but another bloke comes in. He picks up a 387 gram cauliflower, costs $2.49, does some simple maths, works out that they're charging $625 per kilo for $6.25 per kilo for cauliflower, and work out it costs $2.49. They're charging $6.25, and basically puts this on. What he did is put it on a retiree site where there's 50,000 people, and said, "I think Woolworths are ripping off our farmers." This went viral, and Woolworths had to make an official statement about their price of their cauliflower. So in an open source world, we've got less ability to, because of transparency and the control going back to the consumer, we need to be much more mindful of the expectations of our external stakeholders. Does that make sense? Okay. Unilever's purpose, another example, Unilever's purpose-led brands. So these are brands that replace all the domestic products, toothpaste, cleaners, all sorts of stuff. It's got 28 sustainable living brands. They are growing at 69% faster than the rest of the business. And that's because Unilever themselves realize they need to disrupt themselves, right? And that's the key word, because the external needs or expectations of them as a company have shifted. So the more we get insular and the less external we are aware, the less we're able to disrupt ourselves to do that. Let's for the purpose of time, talk about this. What is the risk of not adapting? Here's the risk. If you can imagine that on the outside here, there's cycles of external change going on in your environment, think about what they are for you. All right, so they could be to do with things like government changes, they can be to do with demand changes, they can be to do with workforce changes, they can to do with supply changes. The more we're disconnected from those relationships and the needs of our ecosystem and who we depend on, the more we find it difficult to adapt our internal structures and processes to do that. Now, most of you would call this basic strategic planning. You do an external review over here, and you know, here's your external review, and here is your internal system. My point of view is that these lines here between the external and the internal systems are much more permeable than they've ever been in the past, and they need to adapt much quicker than they ever have in the past. And if you're unable to do that, you'll struggle to keep up. I've been working with clients on this for the last 2 or 3 years. And what I aim to do, first of all, is work with leadership teams, groups of leaders, silos, and different groups within the organization internally and then externally to improve relationships and connections. So they're much more adaptive and they're much more profitable and they enjoy their work much more. Here's an example of someone I've just been working with recently. And the way I do it is I firstly look at the ecosystem that the organization works in, and we kind of map that out. We look at all the components, the layers. This is what I mentioned before. We look at all the externals. And over time, we develop measures that we're going to use to measure the success of the team and the organization. And over time, what we do is we, either on a 6-month cycle or a 90-day cycle, we try to improve the dynamic, the teamwork dynamic, both internally and externally. And then we take measures as we go along. Okay. The point of this today was not to go too much into the detail because I can talk to you about that when you book in a call. The point of this was to say, if we go back here, the world has changed. The world is open source now. Dynamics, growth and risk dynamics have changed. And the question to you is, have you upgraded your teamwork? Have you upgraded the way your organization operates internally, externally, so that you are more of an ecosystem, more competitive, and you've got strong connections with your employees, your staff, your suppliers, your partners, and there's trust throughout that ecosystem. That's what I'm talking about. And that's what I'm talking about helping you with. So let me just finish this little presentation by a little ask. My ask is this, which is, if this resonates with you, if this is something you know your business needs, and you'd like to partner with someone that can help you bit by bit move your business in this direction, get in contact with me. You know how, right? Send me a message, an email, whatever it is, get in contact. Let's have a chat about where you're at right now, where you want to get to, and what's stopping you building the teamwork culture that you want. I hope that's been useful for you. Talk to you next time on The Reason on the Road.